Good afternoon and good time of day, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It's a webinar on modern airline retailing, and in this episode, number 4, we are talking about procurement considerations. So essentially about requirements which you may consider while building or buying a modern airline retailing solution. So the goal of this webinar is twofold. So first, we will introduce the white paper, which was published a month ago. And second, we want to hear the highlights from our industry experts. To help me do that, let me introduce the speakers of this webinar. So first, we have Anna from IAG, who is also representing British Airways and Iberia in the consortium. Then we have Lokman from Turkish Airlines. And then here with me, I have also Valerie from IATA, and we are joining you from our IATA Geneva office. So thank you for joining and welcome to this webinar. I'm really glad to have you. So before we start, let me just briefly take you through the agenda of today. So first, we'll give a quick introduction. So Valerie will introduce the consortium and remind what is it and what are the main deliverables of it. You've heard of that word already once, and many of you might know it. And then I will walk you through the very brief introduction of the white paper that was published a bit over a month ago. And the main part of the webinar will be really to go over with our speakers from the airlines and hear the highlights from them. We will go basically section by section of the white paper. With that and without any further ado, I will hand over to Valerie. Thank you, and please.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you, and welcome to this webinar. So just to give you a short introduction on what is the consortium was established with a specific focus on the transition to offers and orders. We have today 16 members that are part of the consortium, and 3 airlines joined in 2024. And all these airlines have one thing in common, is the ambition to move to offers and orders with the support of their top management. We have a few key principles for this consortium, which is really the acceleration of the transformation through thought leadership, but also bringing people from different backgrounds, breaking the silos in order to achieve this. And one thing that is very important is that everything that is discussed and comes out of the consortium is also published online and is available publicly for the rest of the industry. So from now, we have already published a number of papers that are available online. Those are 4 in total, so I will show you 3 now, and one of them, of course, is the focus for this specific session today. The first document that was released in March last year was the business case, and it's really the reason why the industry should go through this transformation. Then another document was released, which is the business reference architecture, which shows the different modules that are available, the capabilities that are available in a world of 100% offers in orders in the end state. And this reference architecture has also been endorsed by the Passenger Standards Conference as a recommended practice, and is now handed over to the industry for further updates. We have a last document, which is the IT provider readiness and airline transition pathways to 100% offers and orders, which is also published online and is giving you some insights about how this transition and how are the different steps in order to move to the end state shown in the business reference architecture. And I'll hand over to Oleg for the topic of today, which is the procurement guidelines.
Thank you, Valerie. So moving on to the topic of this webinar. So the last and the fourth white paper that was released to the public is this Procurement Considerations white paper. It was released over a month ago, and it's already got over 3,000 downloads. What the goal of this white paper is, essentially, it puts forward a compilation and a list of topics that are useful to consider when building a platform or buying a platform for modern airline retailing. So, you know, at some point you have been perhaps building the case for change, you're continuing your journey to modern airline retailing, or just starting. And at some point, there will come a need that you will want to define your modules a little bit better and scope the solution that you're going to build or buy. And that's where this paper comes handy. It really goes into the functional requirements on one part that will help you define the modules and the systems that you would be procuring. And on the other hand, it also deals with many business topics related to sourcing the system, and essentially topic that an airline and a vendor would need to agree upon when starting a journey towards the end state of modern airline retailing. So this white paper was produced in the consortium by IATA, obviously with input all the airlines and valuable contributions, all of those that you see on the screen. As well, there were two groups that contributed to this white paper. So there was an airline product management working group that Lokman in fact is representing, and then there is an airline retailing for finance working group. The paper is essentially a synthesis by IATA, and the white paper was endorsed by all these 11, well, the consortium and 11 logos that you see on the screen. That's 17 airlines in total. So if you haven't downloaded the white paper yet, I would suggest that you can try to use your phone and scan the QR code if it's visible enough on your screen, and if not, to type the link on the browser, and then you will have a paper at hand. Moving on, I will just briefly overview the contents of the paper before we go to our speakers. And for the first question, so here, this 60-page paper is made out of requirements, questions, and principles on 3 different areas. And first, there is the light introduction as to what a tendering process might look like and how potentially to use this paper in an RFI, in RFP, so in the sourcing processes. The second part, it's short, 3 pages, but it's really important, and it lays down the guiding principles for modern airline retailing, and it also introduces the business reference architecture. So this section 2, it's been endorsed by the 15 vendors that participated in the consortium last year, and it's also part of the previous publication as well. Then the part number 3 and 4, or sections 3 and 4 of the paper, are really the core of the content here. So first, in the section 3, so the aim was to really produce the requirements and potential requirements for the final clean end state without any use of legacy. So as you know, in the industry, there are a number of RFP templates that might deal with the PSS or NDC platform, but what we wanted to really establish is the baseline of requirements for the clean and pure final state without any legacy artifacts and as little thinking in terms of legacy terminology as possible. So that's 25 pages on that. And in the section number 4, there are general considerations on the procurement and essentially on relations between a vendor and an airline. So I will stop a bit more in each of the section as we go forward, but now let me ask the first question from our panelists. So Anna and Lokman, you were part of creating this white paper in the consortium. How useful was it for you, and how airlines can use it? Can you share briefly? Starting from you, Anna, please.
Okay, thank you, Oleg. So this document was prepared when BA was well into the RFP process already. So within our input, we shared our experience in running a sourcing project for a modern retailing platform. This is why I think overall the document can be very useful for the airlines that are new or are just starting the process of planning, running an RFI or RFP for this technology. It definitely gives a good background on potential requirements, recommendations for the sourcing processes, and working methods. It sets the scene on how to prepare for a tender for modern retailing platform. Within this document, IATA and consortium airlines wanted to establish an industry reference for the key business requirements for an airline retailing platform. So I will definitely recommend to download it and read it through.
Thanks, Anna. How about you, Lokman? Anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Oleg. Actually, I believe it is really useful for all airlines because why we contributed to this document so much, we were in a clarification process of trying to understand the modern airline retailing concept as a whole. So we would like to review all the details as much as we can. So I found the document really useful for each airline, because even if you have started your journey, or if you are just starting your journey, you can find something useful for you, because it contains a lot of information that also the document explains itself very well. It explains how to use the document, how to create RFI or RFP, or how to communicate with vendors, how to ask questions to vendors, how to score vendors, and also guiding principles for IT and business.
Thanks, Lokman, for that. And I would suggest that we move to discuss a bit the first section of the white paper, which deals in general about sourcing process of modern airline retailing system. And here I would like to ask sort of fairly basic question, Anna. So in terms of evaluating vendors in general, and specifically about trying to understand vendor commitment and vendor capabilities, how would you approach the process of that, and how this paper can help to that end?
Yes, so first of all, I think I'm going to start with different ways of checking the vendor commitment and capabilities, and then I will refer back to the white paper. So at IAG, we periodically check vendors' progress on IT solutions, commitment and capabilities as part of our strategic supplier management process. During the regular sessions with the vendors, I think it's very important to ask for the information related to the amount being invested into this technology, ask about the roadmap. So those are the key things that we cover during our strategic supplier management process. I would also definitely recommend different industry events. Conferences are definitely a very good opportunity to see supplier progress within this subject, and also that gives the opportunity for startups and different smaller vendors to share their innovative ideas within this subject. As part of the consortium initiative, we've been reviewing suppliers' commitment and progress in details by running questionnaires and having several-hour sessions with each of the vendors who agreed to respond to it. That happened last year. Next supplier meetings are scheduled for beginning of June, during which we'll definitely be able to assess the progress versus the last year. During the RFI or RFP process, it is a good practice to ask vendors on top of their roadmap to also run demos and deep dive sessions that we refer to within the white paper. And those should be really focused on the offer and order management capabilities. While running a sourcing process, you will be assessing each of the requirements in terms of their full or partial support of each specific capability. But I would definitely advise, please ensure that you have the right set of business stakeholders and experts involved in the whole assessment during your RFI and RFP process. And we definitely covered that point within the white paper.
Thanks, Anna. That's a very good summary. Turning to you, Lokman, and hopefully we'll be to hear you now. So if not, just feel free to switch off the camera, but if not, yeah, please keep it on. So a bit more specific question on the RFP process itself and the role of RFP, templates and list of requirements. So, currently there hasn't been any vendor that figure out the end state and build a solution that's really legacy free. So how useful to this end to procure this type of system and RFP template might be, and yeah, how realistic would it be to define all the requirements upfront before really engaging in the dialogue with the vendors?
Yeah, hope my connection will be better now. So I think we can use Einstein's quote here: make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. So in this case, yeah, the requirements that you are going to produce in the unknown world should be simpler, and you need to ask at first the open questions to understand it better, because no one has a complete product today and no one has all the answers today. So because of that, I think it could be good to have only some open questions at first, and after that, questions, after a deep dive for each question and each module and each container box will be beneficial, I guess. I can't say the number of requirements that you need to have, because it will depend on your end vision. So you need a clear end vision to be sure that you are heading to that way. So each airline's number of requirements should be different, but at first it will be good to start with open questions, I guess.
Right, thanks for that. Perhaps moving on to Anna, how the process, sourcing process and at BA has looked like. Did you went back and forth a couple of times with redefining the requirements, or yeah, if you can share what you can.
Yes, of course. So the main steps were related to market review. So that was the first step to decide which vendors should be invited to the RFP. Then we had many months of hard work of our internal experts together with external consultants to prepare a long list of functional and non-functional requirements. From the procurement perspective, we used our standard RFP templates and internal resources to run the RFP process. I did it on my own. The RFP itself, in my view, was really critical for moving forward with our decision to select a provider for offer and order solution. I would like to emphasize that within the RFP itself, on top of the functional and non-functional requirements, it's really important to have the common understanding of the modules, as well as the clear transition path that we're going to cover later on in order to finalize the sourcing process. Please note that at BA, we have taken the approach of combining offer and order into a single RFP, and procurement exercise was, thanks to that, a bit easier for making a business case rather than running each individually. So I think that more or less covered how we've done it on our side.
Thank you. Very good summary. I would suggest that we move on to the next section of the white paper, and let me start with a quick overview of that one. So in this page, you see basically an area where the functional requirements to be considered are presented in the white paper. It is a snapshot of the reference architecture that's been created in the consortium and handed over to the industry, which Valerie has mentioned previously. And in this white paper, so what was done is essentially we selected the key priority areas: product, offer, order, and financial management, and went one or sometimes two levels down from the architecture and capability definitions and worked out some potential requirements. So behind each of the yellow boxes, there may be half a page or even whole page of the potential requirements to be considered. And then there's also other business areas and domains, so they're kept at a relatively high level, but those requirements can be added later as with the following releases of the consortium. One detail I'd like to highlight, that this kind of architecture, here it focuses on the core capabilities or backend capabilities of the systems, and they would be serving any channel. So that's to say any modern channels, being the direct, airline.com, indirect channel powered by NDC APIs, or staff channels such as a contact center. And I will not go into any details further than that, just to highlight that this topic will be a focus topic of the upcoming webinar that is next week. Now just ask one question from each of our speakers. So starting from you, Lokman, on product management. It is a significant change, and to have a product management even on the architecture map this way, as it is a departure from common process that is based on filed fares. How important is this change from your perspective, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, thank you. I think having the product catalog and the product management capability is the cornerstone of becoming a retailer. So it will unlock the full potential, and in each modules and in each capability, we will use the references in this product catalog. So it will also make it easier to communicate with our partners, with sharing which products we are selling and in which cases we would like to have a partnership. So this is a huge change for us, actually, moving from file phase to thinking with product mindset. So if we can do this product management thing really well, and I know that in airline product management work group, they are working on this, and I am also a part of that work group. So they nearly built a framework, and it is now turning to a recommended practice, I guess. So this product management thing we need to have a common understanding in this product management, because at the end of the day, we need to understand each other. So there should be a standard in this product management, and with this only we will be true retailer.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for highlighting that essentially product management is the starting point and the basis for really retailing different products in all the channels. And just to add that this product management framework, it is, as was said, it is a recommended practice that came out in the conference last year, and then the groups are taking further steps on this journey in the product management domain. Now, I would like to ask one question from Anna on the order management. So how important is order management for you in the IAG and the operating carriers that you're representing, and especially the departure from the PSS? So how it is important for you?
Yeah, so like order management is absolutely important to BA and to IAG Airlines because first of all, we've spent decades trying to retrofit or force new offer-based initiatives into old order infrastructure. Implementing these initiatives is constantly complex, costly, time-consuming, and will only ever get used so far as the system allows. We need to simplify the current ecosystem, redesign it with the customer in mind. Secondly, the current ecosystem A, often falls over, causing customer issues, and B, isn't set up to facilitate the next generation of customer journeys. For example, seamless journeys through the airport using one ID.
Yeah, very good to hear. Thanks for that. I hear that it's really on top of your agenda. Yeah, I'll suggest that we move on to the next section. And here, again, just a quick summary of the white paper first. So on the screen on the left, you see essentially a table of content of this section. So there are 7 topics addressed there. And the first one is the strategic alignment with modern airline retailing, which deals in general with the questions, which are open questions to vendors that the airline can ask on topics such as the vendor alignment to the end vision, to the guiding principles, to the architecture. And I will not go through more in this in detail, but I would just say that if you have just only 5 minutes to download this white paper and read something, that would be, I would say, the strategic alignment with modern airline retailing section that has the key highlights that are important both for the vendors and the airlines. Here on the right, we've selected the few points that I know are important for you, Anna and Lokman. So maybe I'll also go back with a question first on modularity. So how important is this modularity? Maybe you can highlight again as a PSS is essentially a black and solid black box. And in the future, would it be modular, and how important is to have modular? So Lokman.
Yeah, modularity is the hot topic of modern airline retailing, actually, because in today's PSS, we have everything in the same place. So if we would like to update something or would like to change the inventory or any other core component, so it will take a lot of time, and you really feel that transition. So in the new world, as we are using today's new technologies, so the modularity will be really important for us to update the systems if necessary. And also it will be really important to buy some components from other vendors. So in this case, I believe it is also useful for IT vendors. Why? Because in that case, IT vendors could focus their workforce on the components that they can do in a better way. They don't need to really focus on everything as a whole, but the modularity needs a lot of standards, and we have discussed this a lot in the past. So it's not an easy thing, but in the future, the modularity will really help us to run the systems easily and smoothly. So in this case, maybe in the future, there could be even another layer on top of other layers to enable to make the systems work modular, to make the systems communicate together. So there could be something in the mind of also vendors to make that happen.
Yeah, thank you for that summary. So I hear that modularity is really important for airlines, but as well as useful for vendors, and that they can focus and dedicate their effort in the best possible way. Staying still with you, Lokman, and when on the topic of scalability, can you talk through that, why that one is important, and also consider, in your view, do you think the true and high scalability is achievable with the legacy system? So that needs to be really a change and really kind of native digital systems that would support true scalability.
Yes, I think that it will be easier to use the digital native systems, because in only that case we will be really scalable. Because in today's PSS we have a lot of restrictions and it blocks some ways to be scalable. So why is the scalability is important? So in the future we will be getting, as airlines, we will be getting more volume from all parties, and also in the future, there, as we are going to planning to sell more products, there will be more transactions in our systems. So, and there will be more maybe disruptions we will be facing, because we will be partnering with different intermodal partners and different other partners. So in that case, I think the disruption cases could be wide in the future. So because of that, because of the number of requests we are getting, the volume, and the things that we could be having in the future, the scalability is really important for each system, and we need to design our modules or design our systems keeping this in mind.
Yeah, I hear that. Maybe then to ask Anna as well your perspective on modularity and scalability. Is there something you would add? How important is it from your perspective?
Yeah, let me try to answer it from a procurement perspective, Oleg. So in my view, the move to open order management should create more competition, as it would be modular and should allow to bring in more IT players to the market. As consortium, we are keen to see new entrants and increased competition in this area, as that is good for airlines and our customers, both in terms of cost and innovation. There is more modularity than just split between open order modules, and I would like airlines to think about that. While reviewing vendor solutions, the airlines should always think about the business outcomes before selecting the best possible options. In terms of scalability, on top of what Lokman covered, I think we should also remember about the impact of such things like NDC on some of the key metrics. I'm talking about the look-to-book ratio here, and always incorporate this information into airline requirements within the RFI, RFP.
Yeah, thanks for the summary and highlight. I would guess we can go to the last box that we see on the screen and then talk a little bit about the product development and co-creation. So Anna, as BA is embarking on the journey with Amadeus, can you tell a little bit how are you planning to work together with British Airways and Amadeus on that topic?
Yes, really briefly. So Amadeus has been IAG's and BA's strategic supplier for many, many years. And with the announcement dated from 16th of April, we confirmed to continue this partnership, also in co-creating Amadeus open order management solution called Nevio. Both parties need to work very closely to deliver this new and ambitious project. We believe that using a single supplier takes some risk out of very complex build and helps with delivery and transition. And it's putting more emphasizes risk on the supplier to make the end-to-end process work seamlessly. But again, let's not forget about the modularity and the options for the future.
I see. Yeah, thanks for that. So really, it's a co-creation effort that you're engaging in with your IT provider. Speaking to you, Lokman, the situation might be slightly different as Turkish, I understand, owns the PSS. So how would you engage with IT providers? What could be a best practice around product development?
Yes, we are running our own PSS, and actually it brings some complexity with it and some advantages with it actually. So in this case, it means that we don't have any long-term agreement with any vendor. So in this case, it will be easier for us to select any vendor if we really would like to work with the vendors. So there are some options that we can perform in the future, and these are replacing, actually at the end of the day we need a modern offer and order system. But how we can do this, it is a decision that need to make in Turkish Airlines. So in knowing this, actually designing the draft roadmap, we have designed our own draft roadmap to do something and to understand it in a better way. So this part, actually, we can collaborate with any vendor, and we are communicating with some of them currently. And we are trying to clear our mind to understand what we need to do, what is the best way to do this. But since we are running our own PSS, we have our own complexity because we have our own workarounds. So in this case, also there could be a problem to work with a vendor in this, solving all the workarounds to make it feasible for us to use a new system. So in this case, actually, we are trying to move forward with caution to see what is best for us, because we know that there should be a special solution for us as we are running our own PSS. It could be easier for us to work with a vendor, but we need to choose the vendor wisely, and the vendor should really need to know that they will be handling some special cases just for us.
I see. I hear that it brings some complexity, and you are still on the way and well on the way to figure out exactly how to work in the future on that. So we'll keep the eyes and ears open. Moving on, I would suggest to the next section on the transition, and really this is a bonus section in this white paper. And there's a previous white paper that Valerie has introduced. So the QR code for that one and the link you also see on the screen. So that white paper would be a first reference on the transition. And in this white paper, the aim was just to go a little bit more in some principles on transition, in key requirements that are useful to consider, and open questions to the vendors. And the two blocks of the requirements that are highlighted there covered is the coexistence of all the new environments, as well as interoperability between, an airline powered by the new environment and the one that's still on the PSS. So we'll try to take some questions from this as well. But first, let me ask how in general you would approach, guys, this topic of transition. Would you have one RFP on the end state and one RFP on the transition, or would it be an RFP, that is just targeting a next transition state? So starting from you, Anna, what's your view?
I think it depends on each airline specific situation. Personally, I wouldn't wait for the current PSS contract expiry date to be a trigger to launch an RFP for modern retailing platform. My view is that the industry needs to start moving forward as soon as possible. So my view is the transition should be part of the RFP and should be the one of the key elements scored within your RFP process. I would recommend to put a lot of effort in defining the transition process together with the RFP participants, as that's one of the elements that will confirm vendors' commitment and readiness to move out of the legacy world.
I see. Yeah, Lachlan, would you agree with that, or you have anything to add?
Yes, I agree with Anna actually, because the transition requirements and the end state requirements should be in the same document, because you need to design the end state with keeping in mind some part of the transition requirements. Otherwise, maybe you will have a perfect end state RFP, but for the transition part, you need to link it with the state requirements. So in that case, if you don't do that, it won't work very well. So I believe you need to agree on Anna. You need to put them in the same document, and you need to work hard to define all the requirements, not each of them explicitly, because there are a lot of unknowns, but to be able to track them together, you need to keep them in the same document and link them if necessary.
I see. Yeah, thank you for sharing your view on that one. Yes, what I would suggest next, that we would take perhaps one highlight on the topic of the boxes from each of these one. So if you would select out of these 4 items, I understand that probably all of them are important, but which of the most important item for you would be, and why? Perhaps Anna, can from you starting.
I'm thinking. For me, probably the standards. Standards are playing a crucial role in making this new world working. We definitely need standards for such areas as offer management, order management, communication, to avoid airline vendor lock-in. We need standards for product management, taxonomy, profile, catalog. My favorite topic, interline partner settlement. It's another area that definitely requires standards. Complex servicing. I know it's been always a big item for the discussions, both for voluntary and involuntary servicing. And I think the last standard that I wanted to focus on is really delivery on orders. So I would recommend to airlines to ensure that contractually you oblige vendors to build their solutions around the IATA open order principles and future standards. So please don't forget about it.
Yeah, I see. Lachlan, what's your number one?
Yeah, I will also choose standards, because without standards in your own airline, you can do whatever you want. And also the vendors will create their own standards, and each airline will create their own standards. So in the new world, modern airline retailing, when we are talking about that, we need to communicate efficiently, and we can do this only with standards. So we need to understand each other, really well. So to do that, to make that happen, we really need standards, and we need to have a common understanding in this modern airline retailing.
I see. All right. Yeah. Seems like you're both agreeing and having a list of items for us and for the industry to focus on. Okay, great. I would suggest I would move to the last slide, and not least that we would perhaps have a time for a few questions from the chat. And if so, I would suggest that Valerie, if you would like to represent them. Just give us a second.
Thank you, Oleg. We had one question about when, more for you, I think, Oleg, when are we planning at IATA to describe the disruption management modules in the procurement guidelines?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Straight to the point. So the next topic that in the consortium we are working on is the delivery on order. But the disruption, I believe it is something it is addressed currently with the interline working group, and it will be coming over in the due course as the groups are coming together to create the outline of that. And what I would encourage is to everybody participate as well into the interline working group that is currently working on one of these topics.
Thank you. We had a question also about what you think is maybe a reasonable number of IT providers to have in your RFI, RFP. So maybe you can give your opinion, Oleg, but maybe Anna, if you can share something about what could be a reasonable number for you to manage, Lokman as well.
Yeah, I would say that would need to be a reasonable number that you can really manage within your procurement and business department, because I would say in order to make it successful, you need to be very close to the vendors during this process. So it's not only about sending an RFP and getting the answers, it's really dedicating time for demos, for deep dive conversations. So personally, I would say 3 to 4. It's probably reasonable set of number of vendors. That's what I would recommend, but of course it's airlines call. Maybe you have a big procurement department and you can do a lot of things. I was the single person helping our department to run that, so I think that was a reasonable number.
Oh, that's quite enough. Yeah, do we have some last question from the chat? Shall we continue?
Yeah, maybe one last question. I think this one we had from the original question that people submitted. I don't know, maybe for you, Oleg, for the delivery management part. When do you think this will be also covered in the procurement guidelines?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can. Yeah, go ahead. Otherwise, I can maybe mention something about the next steps of the consortium that Anna and Lokman are already participating.
Yeah, I can briefly summarize that it's well on the way. This work is happening in the consortium in one of the stream, and it's on the way to be included sort of in the document on the future releases of it. Before we close, I would still suggest that we'll ask one final question from each of you. So again, Lokman, to you. So what would be your final advice to the airlines or maybe the vendors who are participating or embarking in RFI process?
Yeah, I think this RFI RFP process is really important to understand what solutions they will be getting from the vendors. Even if they are trying to build their own modules or own systems, it will be really important to understand what functions these systems will have. So what can I advise to the audience is to first keep it simple, and you can start with a question and answer to many vendors, and after that you will be able to choose you can try to understand which one could be the best vendor for you to walk through the way, because it won't be a short transition period. So you need to walk the way, for example, 5 year, 10 year, maybe more than that. So in this case, maybe you can start small and try to understand in a better way, have a lot of brainstorming session, and try to fine tune the requirements. And after that, you will choose the vendors you are going to proceed, and after that you will try to detail that, and this is nothing you can clearly set the requirements in advance. So you need to accept that in the future, most probably you need to update the requirements, and you need to fine tune that, you need to add some more requirements, you need to delete some requirements. So keeping this in mind could help to walk the way easier.
Yeah, I see. So you really suggest to go to the market and start simple. Great. Yeah, Anna, with you, like, what would be your final advice to perhaps to the vendors, having been in at least one of, well, quite a few RFP processes, I would imagine, over the course of the years. Maybe also if you have seen any, let's say, common mistakes that the vendors have done during the process you participate.
I think what I'm going to focus on is really the mistakes that both parties can make during the RFP process. Within the BA, we learned that both parties need to have a clear joint understanding of all modules and their future functionality and how they link within the airline business objectives. I can't even tell you how many times we went back to the business reference architecture that IATA published to have the whole overview of everything that has to be covered. I would also advise to include transition early in the RFP process as one of the key discussion points. Don't leave it for the last stage of the RFP, and get as much as you can out of the suppliers in this area, because you can only jointly agree on the transition to happen.
I see. Thanks so much for that. All right, I think we have just the time for very last question to Valerie. We already heard about the 3 white papers that was released. This is the 4th one that we are summarizing today, and then delivery has been raised as a topic. So maybe you can summarize, please, what's next for the consortium.
Yes, of course. So we are working with the consortium really hand in hand for this year on 6 work streams. So a lot of work is coming. So still for first half of the year, you will be expecting another white paper on the business case with some key elements to pitch this transformation to your senior management, as well as some key main decision drivers. For the second half of the year, the focus will be on the vision for delivery with others, but also an industry roadmap showcasing the different impacts on all the different stakeholders involved in the transformation. And also expect an overview of state of the industry on all the IT providers that are preparing and embarking this journey with you, that will be delivered at the WPS in October. So a lot to come, so stay tuned.
Thanks so much for that, Valerie. I think with that, we are coming to the end of this webinar. So I would first like to thank everybody for dialing in, and especially to our speakers. Before we close, I would also remind the recording of this webinar will be available for you. If you haven't downloaded the white paper, you still see a QR code. There's the last chance to do it before it disappears. And then the last thing is that there's also an upcoming webinar exactly in 1 week of time on business reference architecture at the same time. So you can sign up using the link below. And with that, yeah, thanks so much again. And thank you, Anna, Lokman, and Valerie for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.